Corey here. We're going to be trying out some chess analysis content. I want to thank Jordy DH for providing their game for our analysis for today. I had made a TikTok a couple of days ago kind of proposing the content idea as a way to kind of have content for the YouTube channel. And when I go back to chess coaching, I think this would be a good idea for students I'm going to be working with to provide like a video chess analysis for games for them to take home, or like, well, I would email it to them for them to keep and they could watch the tape over. Whereas I think this would be a benefit instead of just having the one-on-one coaching sessions where we're just kind of talking and working things through, which is good for the process. Though I've had some students in the past that say they kind of forgot everything we had talked about. So this would be kind of a way to reinforce, and I'm not saying that they necessarily forgot everything we talked about for real, but it would help and reinforce a lot of the things that we were talking about. And it's a good way for me to also keep track of their progress over time. So the hope for this is not to be any more than 10 or 15 minutes, just kind of go over and look for like particular things that stick out to me. And what I'm going to do at the end is kind of, well, probably throughout, be adding up the strengths and the areas of growth and hopefully offer some strategic ideas for Jordy DH to take away with. So one of my, I guess my call to action for you if you're watching is to also put that in the chat as far as like, what is one strength of yours in chess, like something you're really proud of that you're really good at, and one area of growth, so something you have struggled with or something you have a challenge with. And what I'll do is I'll go back and look into the comments and see if I can come up with some strategic ideas based on what you're saying your challenges are. Okay? All right, without delaying any longer, let's jump into it. So we see that Jordy DH is playing as black and his opponent is playing as white. And so we're just going to kind of go through. I'm not going to spend time thinking about opening theory. So, oops, let me not mess with that too much. Let me use this. 1 second. Okay. So yeah, I'm not going to be looking too much into opening theory. I'm mostly just going to look for ideas, mainly focusing on tactics, because this is what I typically think about when I'm working with players under 1,000. So also for some context, this game was originally played on chess.com. So the rating, difference between Lead Chess and chess.com, I think that varies based on rating level. But I imagine if Jordy, if you were playing on Lead Chess, you may be closer to around 900 or to 1,000 on Lead Chess. Okay, so I'm seeing that you're developing your pieces. Good, developing knights before bishops. So with the bishop here, I see the idea, and I see this idea a lot. I'm wondering if you're watching this, Jordy, like what you were considering. So like my first thought is that you're kind of over defending the pawn, and I use over defending and kind of like a relative term because it could be just justifiable just to say that and be done with it. At the same time, I'm wondering if this bishop is being a little bit limited here, right? So it's not on its optimal square. I think you could use another piece to protect that pawn, such as another pawn instead of the bishop. So I like the idea of developing the bishop. Oops, my fault. Developing the bishop, although I think it may kind of obstruct the view of this bishop. I do see like it potentially can come out this way, so that's also an idea. So I'm not hating on it too much. I'm just kind of thinking, I think this bishop could be better placed. All right, looking through. All right, so they create a little battery here with their bishop and their queen. I don't know if you would call it a battery, but they're lined up together. Castling, I love it. Okay, so they play c3. It looks like they're playing for d5. I'm sorry, d4. So they're trying to control the center. All right, something to be mindful of. They're expanding. Again, at this level, I'm not expecting a lot of theory to come in play. And honestly, myself included, like I don't really spend a lot of time thinking about theories. A lot of it boils down to tactics. I gotta stop doing that. I'm using 2 screens here, so I'm trying to manage both. That's an area of growth for me, is to figure out how to navigate that more easily. Okay. Apologize if that's a little bit annoying. Okay, so you are maneuvering your bishop to the other side like that. So you notice that you kind of shut down the bishop on one side. You're going to develop on the other. Good deal. They're developing naturally. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, like I said. All right, so they're pinning your knight, no problem. Sure, sure. Okay, so this is one of the drawbacks from that original move to d6. So I would put that down as an area of growth. Think about where you want your bishop to land. Yeah, you end up kind of losing time having to move it twice, and I don't see a good enough justifiable reason as to do that. So it's not, there's exceptions to every rule to keep in mind. Here, though, I don't see that it really served you too well. And at the same time, I'm also thinking about this move here. Like now that we've moved the bishop here a move later, it's also an opportunity for your opponent to kick the bishop again. So let's say you take, and then all of a sudden, like your bishop's moving a third time, and that seems uncomfortable. Things to keep in mind. Okay, and they move their bishop back too, so it's interesting. Some maneuvering going on over here, and maybe this is a little bit too deep, but I'm also just kind of thinking about they haven't castled their king yet, and now they're, challenging your bishop. Though, I mean, there's not a lot of opportunity for you here to kind of open up the position to attack the king either, so it's just like a thought I'm having. I like that, putting the queen on the same file as the king. They should probably consider castling sooner or later, because if you do successfully open up the position, it could potentially become something more. And I think the queen is overall more active here. Yeah, and you're also backing up the bishop, so you have the option to kind of take back with the queen if you wanted. They do castle. Yeah, I'm going to come through here a little bit more. I am wondering here, the thinking of taking the knight. You've moved your bishop twice, and now they've moved their knight once. And now you're taking the knight, so you're moving the bishop a third time. To me, that sounds like it's kind of helping out your opponent. So I'm wondering what you were concerned about here with the knight. Were you concerned about maneuvering towards a particular square? Just kind of seeing like what was your mindset. The other thing is, and this also may be a little nitpicky here, you often want to hold on to your double bishops, your bishop pair. Not in every position, though. Like, it's usually kind of a good rule of thumb to kind of only give up your bishop pair for a really good reason, right? Because bishops, they have good long range abilities. They work really well together. And it just kind of, it's like maybe like a smaller advantage than we should really be considering at this level. But something to keep in mind since I'm looking at your game right now. So for me, if I'm seeing like an opportunity to trade a bishop for a knight, I need a good reason, like a good enough reason to do it. Okay, so they take back with the rook. All right, so we're opening up a little bit. So maybe we're opening up the B file. Again, I don't want to spend too much time on these points here. That pawn on H5 is concerning, though they're not attacking it with a minor piece. So I don't know how weak it is right now, but it is something to keep in mind that they have this kind of battery with their rooks. All right, we're maneuvering, taking. All right, so now you kind of like even the playing field as far as the minor pieces, so they don't have their bishop pair anymore. Ooh, I didn't even pick that up. So by taking back with their queen, you notice that the B2 pawn, let me look over here, that the B2 pawn was no longer protected. That's a really good maneuver there, because if they had taken back with this pawn instead of the queen, yeah. So it's something to consider. I don't know if I would hate that move, because that would give more protection to these squares, and they could still kind of maneuver and control the center a little bit better. So I don't hate that if they would take this, at least that's the first thought. I'm not calculating too deeply here. But you notice that the queen took back and that this was left open. I love that. Okay, so let's keep going. So now you're in a great place here, that you're on this great open file. I'm already thinking about you maneuvering here and creating your own little battery there, protecting your rook, and a lot of great opportunities could happen. We may not see specifically like where this is going to lead, but it puts a lot of pressure on your opponent, and they have to worry about kind of back rank issues. So let's say here, potentially you might end up playing here to back rank the king. Right now it's not too big of a thing because they have a lot of protections in this area, but potentially something to keep in mind. All right, trading. All right, that does weaken your pawn structure, though I still like your position here. I think you have a lot of tactical opportunities. Yes, you have some weaknesses to contend with, though I just kind of love having my rook here. Well, your rook. And then you have opportunities to use these open files pretty significantly, and your queen's in a good spot too. It definitely has a lot of potential for the queen to come in. Okay. I wonder if there's something more we could do. Because if we don't trade right away, my thinking is, again, I'm not sure if this would be the right move at the moment, but I'm just kind of instinctively thinking this is a move to consider, so that if they take here, you take back, you're still on this nice file here, and it's like just kind of all up in their business, right? So, and your queen can come back. So I know what we would have to consider is if playing here, if this would be too problematic. At the same time, like if we calculate a little bit further, let's say check, and then they block with the knight, or if they take, let's say, wait, let's say that first, take back, you still have a rook here, they block with the knight, that seems really uncomfortable for them. Also, that seems losing. Like, this is, all right, this is just one line I'm looking at, but if let's say we go with that logic, I'm sorry I have so many arrows. How do I get all these arrows to go away? I don't know. Is there like a button to make the arrows go away? Because I'm like doing them all by hand. Okay, so let's say we played here. They take. We push. They take. We take. So we got a rook on b1. Knight here. Queen here. Hitting the knight twice. And we're hitting this rook. That seems losing to me. But we're just going to stop there. Just a moment to consider. Okay, we take. We take. We're going to play through a few more moves. Ooh. Is there any way to defend that? I don't see it. Nope. Okay. Okay, let's look at, hold on. Here, that was a mistake, right? This was a clear mistake. Your opponent kind of just fumbled here. And I know one of the drawbacks of having the PGN file here is that I'm not able to see the time. So I don't know how much time is left on the clock. I don't know if they had ample time or not to consider. I don't know how much time you had. But this is a no-go because that check is just devastating. And the rook just follows after that. I'm trying to think here, like anything else just seems better because they still had this block, or with the queen even, if you did come here. So like even if they played here or something, they could block this way. Yeah, it's devastating. Okay. I'm going to stop observing the game from here because you're up a significant amount of material, and it's not like your opponent has a crazy attack. Yes, they got a pawn out of the deal, but this is overwhelming from here. So I'm not going to get too bogged down in the rest of the stuff. So judging by this game, it's like talking about some of the strengths that you had. So I thought the opening was very solid, right? So you played based on principles, right? You developed your pieces, you played the king pawn, developed your knights, developed your bishops. Thinking again, like the way you develop your bishops or even your knights, depending on the position, like putting them in trying their optimal squares. So when I say optimal squares, like they'll be able to take the most space or they have the most potential. In the case where you had, go back to what I mentioned before, play bishop d6, perhaps like if you saw like maybe you're going off of an opening here and there's some theory, like you can sort of dismiss what I'm saying unless you're not sure what the purpose is, like enough to figure out what's happening next. So when I say purpose, not just to defend the pawn, what's the idea beyond that? Like how are you, like do you already have a specific plan in mind? Because when you move the bishop again, that makes me feel like that maybe it was a mistake, right? So thinking about can I use a different piece, or like a piece of lesser value to do the same job? And in this case, the pawn would have done that, right? So even if you had played bishop e7 and then d6 with a pawn, the pawn would do the job of protecting the other pawn. So you have this kind of nice little pawn chain here. They're defending each other. And you'd get your bishop developed to be prepared to castle. So just kind of like thinking about how you can still do the job that you're trying to achieve, but like a little bit more nuanced in such a way, like making sure like pieces of lesser value are doing the jobs that you have intended. Right, instead of using a stronger piece, like you wouldn't want to, like to be a little bit more, not expressive. I don't know, to provide a more like a bigger example, more significant example. I can't think of this word. I use this word all the time. Whatever. But you wouldn't just use the queen to defend the pawn if you had the knight, bishop, and pawn opportunity, right? So that would be like, why would I waste my queen to just defend a pawn if I could use something else? Similar idea here. If you can just use the pawn to get the same job done, it's fine. Right. So things like that were, things like that to keep in mind to try to make a slight improvements there. I'm not hating on how you developed your other side of the bishop. I think that was really good. It was a good idea in mind. Both you and your opponent were kind of developing pieces. I like the thought of maneuvering. Like sometimes it can be difficult. So there's another strength as well. It can be difficult to think to move the same piece again. And like you want to move everything else once. Though sometimes it's called for that, right? To maneuver your piece to a better square. So I like that you had the thought to maneuver to a better square, just being in consideration again. Well, actually I didn't mention it, to be in consideration for if you move to a more open square, in this case for your bishop to have more opportunities, consider what your opponent could do in response to that. And remember I had said earlier that in this case, like your opponent could like push their pawns, advance their pawns more easily, gain some tempo, and kick your bishop again. So it may not have been as useful, right? Developing your queen, they castle, yada, yada, yada. We talked about this a bit for as far as area growth. When you're going to trade anything, really, have a reason, right? Have a very significant reason to do it. And if you have an idea in the chat, I might have mentioned this earlier, like you can tell me what your reason is, and then thinking in hindsight, like if there's like another move that you could have done that's better, right? So we want to avoid like trading for the sake of trading. And that could be an abundance of different things. So when I say like people make trades, sometimes they are trading because like for knights, like knights can be tricky. They're like, I just don't want to deal with the knight. Don't let that be the reason. Don't let that be a reason based on preferences or fear of what's going to happen, unless it's like an objective reality in the game, right? Now, it's a little bit different if like you have like a minute left on the clock. Then it's like keeping track of knights can be very difficult, and it's not going to be the most accurate game to begin with. Though if you have time and you can process and give yourself a chance to try to figure out where the knight's going, where am I trying to prevent it from going? How can I prevent it? Stuff like that. That's fine. Right. All right. Trades. I like that you played to the semi-open file here with your rook while keep using this rook to protect this pawn. Good choice. All right. I like that we got the bishop. Well, not got the bishop pair back, but remove that difference between you and your opponent. And I like that you noticed that and it can be a difficult thing to notice, right? That at one moment a piece is protected, and the next moment it's not. Right, so it's very important, and even if that pawn wasn't there, it may very well be a good square to put that rook. Right, so they disrupt your pawn structure again. I think you have a lot of tactical opportunities here. I don't know what the computer is going to say. I'm not going to look at the computer for this. I'm going based on like human instinct, intuition, and calculation, and just general knowledge, which I think is a good idea as well. So I don't know if I put it in a recent TikTok video or not, but just thinking about if you're going to analyze games yourself, do not start with the computer analysis, right? Unless you don't plan to ever look at that game again, then yeah, sure, whatever. Just see what the numbers are. Though, if you're really trying to analyze it and get better, do essentially what I'm doing here for yourself, thinking about your strengths, areas of growth, where you could have went better. And then afterwards, you can use the computer to see if like there was some tactical mistakes that stuck out. Right? Or like some of the things that I've said, like you can see if the computer disagrees or agrees with me. You can go back in the computer and see. Though, make sure if the computer disagrees with me that you can figure out what it is the computer is doing differently, and like it's something you could really replicate yourself, right? Because if it's too like computer-like and it's like too advanced for you to be able to process, that's not something you want to think about. So definitely do not memorize what a computer is saying to do if you cannot explain it to somebody else, right? So keep that in mind. And this is when I drew out the aerial. So this was, this may be something we can talk about another time, but there's a lot of tension in this position, and I felt that this was the time to really do some serious calculation, because I sensed that there was some danger for this king, right? And so there's a lot of trade opportunities, a lot of pressure on different pieces, a lot of opportunities to back rank or maneuver this piece to a good square. And I just kind of knew something more was there. And there's probably opportunities earlier to calculate more deeply, though I don't want to get into all that today. Today is more so kind of picking like one or two things to improve on, and then just make it a little bit better next time in your next game, right? We don't want to get too bogged down with every detail. Okay? Alrighty. So thank you again, Jordy H, for sharing your game. I hope this was useful. Let me know in the comments what you think. Another thing I want to kind of leave with is that if you're interested in having one of your games analyzed, the way I've thought about doing this is I'm going to put the ChessCounselor Discord in the description below. So just join the Discord and DM me one of your games for a chance for me to pick your game, and we can do a chess analysis for it so I can use it for content. This will be completely free, and I should be doing this at least for the remainder of the year, kind of having this kind of free content service, and at the same time figuring out what kind of chess content the community wants to see. So if you're watching this and you just want to be an observer and you're enjoying the content, please like and subscribe so they can help the channel and show me that this is something that people want to see. If it's not, then we'll pivot. If it needs improvement, let me know that as well. So I'm definitely open to feedback. Yeah. That's all I have. All right. Thanks, y'all. See ya.